Hey everyone, welcome back to RealFear Files. Tonight, we're diving deep into the back roads and forgotten corners of Alabama, where 9 terrifying true stories have stayed hidden for far too long. From tiny towns where people disappear without a trace, to places where the land itself seems to guard secrets, these stories come from the darkest corners of the Deep South. What you're about to hear has been pieced together from witness accounts, police records, and first-hand experiences from those who lived through events they'll never forget. Every story has been cross-checked to keep it as accurate as possible, though some names and locations have been changed to protect the people involved. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story from the shadows. These are the real accounts that will keep you looking over your shoulder long after the lights go out. The call about Uncle Harold's estate hit me on a Tuesday morning in late March, right as I was rigging lights for a commercial shoot in Birmingham. I was 29, hustling as a freelance photographer, mostly snapping corporate headshots and real estate listings that kept the lights on while my mind chased something that actually mattered. The lawyer on the line, a guy named Caraway, had a voice like gravel tossed into a cement mixer. He told me Harold had dropped dead from a heart attack 2 weeks back, in his office in a little place called Cedar Hollow, a town I'd only passed through a handful of times as a kid. Harold was my mom's older brother. He'd drifted down to rural Alabama in the early 80s to set up a small accounting shop, serving local businesses and family farms. Never married. Rarely showed up at family gatherings. Quiet guy. Happy with his little world of cotton ledgers and hardware store invoices. When Mom died 3 years ago from cancer, Harold sent a bouquet, but he skipped the funeral. That was the last I heard from him until Caraway's call telling me I was Harold's only heir. The drive from Birmingham ate 4 hours. Interstate faded into state roads, which narrowed to 2-lane county roads winding through pine forests and the occasional solitary Baptist church, perched like a sentinel in a clearing. Cedar Hollow snuck up on me around a sharp bend. Population 680, said a shot-up green sign riddled with bullet holes. Main Street was maybe 20 buildings, half of them dead, windows boarded. A dollar-stop convenience store, a gas station combo, and a diner called Shirley's that looked frozen in 1978. Harold's house was 3 miles out, gravel driveway twisting through thick pine and oak. A modest ranch, white with faded green shutters, surrounded by wild, choking bushes. Caraway had said the key would be under a ceramic frog by the front steps. It was exactly there. Inside, the house smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Everything was too perfect. The kind of obsessively neat only a lifelong bachelor accountant could pull off. Surfaces gleamed. Magazines stacked like soldiers on the coffee table. The office was at the back, a converted bedroom lined with built-in shelves. A massive oak desk facing a window into the woods. 6 steel filing cabinets, gray, industrial, lined the 4th wall, each marked with date ranges stretching back to '82. Caraway had told me 7 years of records had to be kept for taxes. Anything older was mine to shred. But 3 of the cabinets had shiny new combination locks, heavy-duty, glaringly out of place on 40-year-old metal. I started rifling through the desk. Standard office junk, pens, old tax returns, family bills. Then I found a small leather journal shoved behind a box of envelopes. No date on the cover, but Harold's handwriting hit me instantly. Precise, careful, clinical. First entry, 6 months ago. They're getting nervous. 3 members of the Preservation Committee came by today asking about the old files. Told them everything was secure. They don't know about the copies. Preservation Committee. That rang a bell. I'd passed a hand-painted sign driving in. Cedar Hollow Historical Preservation Committee. Meeting third Thursdays at the town hall. The entries got paranoid fast. Harold wrote about doors unlocked when he swore they'd been latched. Phone calls with silence on the other end. 2 weeks before he died, he wrote one last frantic note. If something happens to me, Alex needs to know what this town is built on. Evidence is in cabinets D, E, and F. Combinations are birth dates. Mom's for D, Dad's for E, mine for F. Hands trembling, I hit Mom's birthday on D. Click. Open. Inside, manila folders stacked like grim trophies. Names: Mason, Caldwell, Brennan, Hughes, Patterson. Mason first. Inside were photocopied checks, all mid-'80s, all from something called Big Hollow Development Corp. Amounts from $30,000 to $75,000. Every one labeled Relocation Assistance and Confidentiality Agreement. Folder after folder told the same story. Money to families, mid-'80s, Big Hollow Corp. Memos about moving, and silence. But the handwritten notes stapled to some files made my stomach twist. Mason's folder. Family refused initial offer. See Incident Report 4J for resolution. Caldwell. Husband became problematic after finding Site B. Resolved by security team. Payment to widow approved. Cabinet E, Dad's birthday. Held what Harold called incident reports. Typewritten pages, cold as a morgue. 4J detailed Thomas Mason, found dead in his truck on County Road 47, August 1985. Initials JB on the report. Mason had stumbled onto illegal dumping at the quarry, threatened to go to state authorities. Cause of death? Single vehicle crash, driver error. BAC .14, over the legal limit. Except a second page, Harold's handwriting. Mason was a lifelong teetotaler. Alcohol was planted. Truck staged. County coroner, part of the preservation committee, signed off without question. Widow paid $60,000, kids included. Relocated to Mississippi under NDA. 17 reports. Same brutal pattern. Someone saw too much, asked too much, or refused to stay quiet. Accidents ranged from car crashes to hunting mishaps, ladder falls. Others simply vanished. Notes referenced disposal at Site C or F. Locations unknown, just repeated code names. Cabinet F held the ledger tying it all together. 12 founding families of Cedar Hollow owned Big Hollow Development. In '79, they signed a contract with a New Jersey waste company. $200,000 a year at first, later $400,000, for unrestricted dumping at 3 sites. Abandoned quarry, woods near Big Hollow River, and a vague northeast property. Industrial and medical waste, supposed to be destroyed properly, dumped in the Alabama woods instead. Payments split among families, some earmarked for community management. Coroner, sheriff, deputies, town doctor. Officials either looking the other way or actively covering tracks. Secrecy was absolute. Outsiders who stumbled on it, or locals who asked too much, got resolved. 23 people had been paid off and relocated between '85 and 2003. 11 were too risky or refused. Permanently resolved, Harold's notes said. I was sitting on the office floor, surrounded by files, stomach in knots, when the sound of a truck engine rolled through the gravel outside. I peeked through the window. A white Ford F-250 had parked behind my rental, trapping it. 2 men climbed out, early 60s, dressed like retired farmers. Carhartt jackets, jeans, work boots. Taller one, thick shoulders, leathered face. Shorter one, gaunt, gray crew cut. They didn't knock. Front door swung. Boots on hardwood. My phone? No signal. Too deep in the woods. Panic bubbled as I slammed cabinet F shut, locked it, and stood. They appeared in the office doorway. The tall one's voice, low and soft. "You must be Alex. Harold talked about you." "I'm John Brennan. This is Vic Hughes," he said, not aggressive, just blocking me. "Historical Preservation Committee. Just came by to offer condolences. Harold was a good man. Kept our books straight for 40 years. I forced calm. "Thanks. Going through files, trying to figure what's tax relevant." Hughes stepped closer, eyes scanning the cabinets. "Harold was thorough, maybe too thorough. Some records go way back. We thought we could help, separate the important stuff from old history that doesn't matter." Brennan moved to the doorway, blocking escape subtly. "Cabinet D's open," he said, nodding. "Old business records from Big Hollow Corp's busier days. Harold handled our books back then. Nothing interesting, old taxes, but wouldn't want them in the wrong hands." I knew exactly what was in those files. My heart hammered, but I kept steady. "I just need Harold's personal taxes, bank statements. The rest can stay." Brennan's smile was cold. "Sensible. Still, might be easier if we just took custody of those files. Wouldn't take long." If they got those files, any chance of exposing Cedar Hollow's secrets vanished. 11 people had died trying to stand up to these men. My eyes darted between them, realizing they were testing me. Would I fold or end up permanently resolved? Then I saw it. Harold's old desktop, monitor dimly glowing. And in the reflection of the window, a tiny red light blinking. A hidden camera. Just where Harold would have put it if he'd known this day would come. The red dot blinked back at me, a tiny warning that Harold had thought ahead. That he had always known someone like them would show up. Brennan and Hughes lingered, casual but deadly, like predators sizing up prey. I forced a shrug, keeping my hands visible. "Well, the files aren't going anywhere. I'll figure it out later." Hughes's eyes narrowed. "See, that's the thing about Harold. He was careful. Too careful sometimes. Some records go back decades, and some, well, they're not just numbers." He stepped closer, boots silent on the hardwood. "You don't want to dig too deep, kid. Some history's better left buried." I swallowed hard. "I'm just here for his personal stuff. Taxes, accounts. That's it." My voice sounded thin even to me. Brennan let out a low chuckle. "Taxes, sure. But those other files? That's not your business. Not anymore." He pivoted, resting one hand on the cabinet, the other dangling at his side. "We can save you a lot of trouble. Load them up. Take them with us. Quick. Easy." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, but I knew the stakes. 11 names. 11 people who had refused and they'd been erased. And now it was me. One wrong move, and I'd be next. My pulse was a drum in my ears. Then I remembered the camera. That tiny red pinprick meant Harold hadn't left me defenseless. It also meant they hadn't spotted everything. My eyes flicked to the monitor again, and a thought struck. If the camera recorded, maybe there was a chance to expose this. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I think I'll handle those files myself. Tax stuff first, personal stuff. The rest stays." Brennan's face tightened, the casual veneer slipping. Hughes shifted, like a coiled spring. Neither said a word. They were waiting, testing, measuring how much resistance I could handle. I moved toward the desk, deliberately slow. My fingers grazed the keyboard, hesitating. Outside, the wind rattled through the trees, carrying the faint screech of a distant bird. The house felt tighter, the shadows darker, like they were pressing in. I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears. "You're being sensible," Brennan said, voice almost friendly now, but the words dripped menace. "We wouldn't want anything to happen to you, accidentally." I nodded, hiding my fear. "Of course. I just need to sort what's mine." Hughes leaned against a shelf, scanning the room. "Harold did good work. Made sure nothing ever slipped. But some of those files, that's not bookkeeping. That's management. That's control." I forced myself to focus. The first step was simple. Get the evidence out. I had to move fast, think fast. One wrong move and it would all vanish. I slid the chair slightly, putting myself between them and the cabinet. My hands shook as I opened Cabinet F again. Ledger after ledger stared back at me. Payments, locations, notes in Harold's meticulous hand. Names of families, dates, amounts. Everything connected. They didn't move, but I felt their gaze, heavy and unyielding. My stomach twisted. 11 lives lost. 11 reminders of what happened to people who defied them. And yet, the camera, Harold's last act, was my only shield. I snapped a few photos with my phone, careful to angle them so the lens couldn't be seen. Outside, the wind gusted, rattling the house, like a warning or a countdown. I kept my voice low. "These are the only ones I need. Everything else stays here." Brennan stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, but not aggressively. "You don't understand. Once you touch those files, well, you could be in over your head." I swallowed hard, eyes locked on his. "I understand. But if something happened to me, people would need to know. This is why Harold left it to me." Hughes shifted, tightening his jaw. Silence stretched, heavy, suffocating. They were waiting for me to falter, to make the mistake that would give them a reason. My lungs burned, my heart pounded, but I held my ground. Then a sound. A faint click from the hidden camera, or maybe the rustle of the files as I nudged them slightly. I froze. Brennan's eyes flicked to the desk, searching. But the red dot glimmered in the window reflection. They hadn't seen it yet. I had one advantage, one fragile, terrifying advantage. I slid the photos onto a USB drive I kept in my camera bag. Slow, careful movements, keeping everything casual. Both men shifted, impatient but cautious. "All done," I said softly. "These are mine. The rest is Harold's history." Brennan and Hughes exchanged a glance, brief and loaded with meaning. Then Brennan exhaled. "All right, for now." His voice was flat, clipped. "Don't get curious. Don't poke around too much. Remember, some things aren't worth knowing." Hughes gave a short nod, shoulders heavy with silent threat. "Take care of yourself, kid." And just like that, they turned, boots clicking down the hall. Outside, the truck roared back to life. I watched through the window as they pulled away, gravel flying, engines fading into the forested horizon. I sank back into the chair, shaking, the room suddenly still. Dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight through the window, oblivious to the horrors hidden in these walls. 17 incident reports, dozens of families manipulated, payments made, lives erased, all of it, catalogued in Harold's obsessive hand. The camera still blinked. The small red dot reminded me Harold had planned for this, that even in death he'd protected me, given me a chance to shine light on what had been buried. And I knew exposing Cedar Hollow would be dangerous, painful, deadly. But Harold had trusted me to carry it forward. I sat there, surrounded by shadows and files, chest heaving. Somewhere in the distance, the forest whispered, hiding secrets older than anyone in town. And for the first time, I understood the weight of the nightmare Harold had left me. It wasn't just inheritance, it was survival. And I was about to dive headfirst into the darkness he had revealed. I rolled into Hollow Branch when I was 26, fresh out of lectures at Auburn, deep in grad school, trying to dig into a thesis about dead churches and the tales that lingered around them in the backwoods South. My advisor, Dr. Kincaid, said Alabama was perfect. Hundreds of crumbling Baptist and Methodist buildings left to rot once the families moved on or vanished. I wasn't there for the architecture. I wanted the stories. The way people made sense of the decay, spun meaning into empty pews, into creaking floors and shattered windows. Hollow Branch wasn't even a town anymore. The sign said 340, but that had to be high. One main street, lined with brick shells, where a feed store, a pharmacy, and a bank used to hum. Now, plywood slapped over every window, silence swallowing everything. Only a gas station convenience joint and a post office pretending to function were still open. I pulled up to the gas station, a rusty Honda humming, and stepped inside. The woman behind the counter looked to be pushing 60, gray hair pulled tight, glasses dangling from a chain. She glanced up from her magazine, and I felt that sharp, rural stare, assessing if I was a problem, a stranger to ignore, or just passing through. I smiled and asked about a place to crash. She shook her head. "Closest motel's in Fairville, 40 minutes north. Not many folks come out this way. Why you here?" I told her I was chasing abandoned churches, researching Mount Calvary Baptist. She froze for a heartbeat, like I'd mentioned something sacred or cursed. Setting the magazine down, she leaned closer. "You mean the white church at the end of Pine Hollow Road? Past the gravel? Been closed since '62. But it ain't exactly abandoned, if you catch my drift. Folks still look after it. Make sure no one tears it up." I raised an eyebrow. "Not abandoned?" She chose her words slow. "It's standing, decent shape considering, but there's things, sounds, people hear singing, old hymns, always night, always the same songs. Some say wind, some say kids. I've heard it myself, ain't neither." She scribbled directions and told me to find Victoria, who ran the local historical society from her house. She knew more about Mount Calvary than anyone alive. I thanked her, grabbed a water bottle and a bag of chips, and drove to the address. Victoria's place was small, white clapboard, screened porch, neat flower beds. She answered on the second knock, a thin woman, early 70s, eyes sharp, smile careful. I explained my research. She invited me in like she'd been waiting, relief in her gaze. Her living room was packed with filing cabinets and stacked boxes, a makeshift archive. Mount Calvary was built in 1887, she said, pulling out a folder stuffed with photos and newspaper clippings. Served the community for 75 years. Peaked in the 40s with about 150 members, mostly farmers. White clapboard, tall windows, steeple with a bell they rang every Sunday. I asked why it closed in '62. Her expression fell. She handed me a clipping. "Carbon monoxide kills 32 during Sunday service. Faulty heater filled the sanctuary with invisible gas. By the time anyone realized, 32 were dead. Pastor, choir, leadership. 14 hospitalized, some with permanent brain damage. Survivors moved to homes, then merged with a congregation in Fairville. The building sat, locked, decaying slowly. I asked about the singing. Victoria poured coffee, set cups on the table, and leaned in. 6 months after the disaster, neighbors started hearing hymns at night. How great thou art, the old rugged cross, amazing grace, just as I am. First they thought maybe survivors were sneaking back. Doors were locked, no one inside. Over decades, dozens reported it. Always the same songs, male and female voices in perfect harmony. Recorded multiple times, never explained. Not wind, not animals, not a glitch. Human voices, singing. Impossible. I spent the afternoon photographing files, clipping articles, taking notes. Victoria handed me a key to the church. Historical Society maintained it for researchers or curious visitors. She warned me, respect the space, lock up, and expect things you can't explain. People usually leave changed. Late afternoon, I drove to Mount Calvary to see it in daylight first. Pine Hollow Road, paved, then gravel, winding through the pines. The church appeared in a clearing, unsettling even in gold sunset. Paint faded but intact, windows whole, steeple straight. An old wrought iron fence enclosed a small cemetery, headstones dating back to the 1800s. I parked, walked the perimeter. Grass trimmed, evidence of care. Front doors heavy oak, weathered but solid, a new lock looking out of place. I pushed it open, hinges silent, oiled. Inside, frozen in time. Pews in perfect rows, altar simple, piano silent with yellowed keys. Hymn boards still hung numbers, the last songs before disaster. Dust thick but even. Smell of old wood, faint chemical scent. I walk slowly down the aisle, sunlight slicing through tall windows, dust glowing. Hymnals placed evenly, candles unburned, neat. Even dust seemed arranged, preserved. 2 hours, photographing, taking notes, capturing the weird energy. As the sun dipped, the church felt alive and dead at once. I left around 7, locked up, drove to Fairville for a motel. Couldn't stop thinking about it. The stories, the care, the 32 dead. Decided I'd come back that night, see if the singing was real. Part of me expected nothing, just legends spun around tragedy. I rolled back to Mount Calvary around 10:30 p.m. The dirt parking area was empty, the surrounding pines dead silent. No rustle of animals, no chirp of crickets, no hoot of owls. Just a thick, pressing quiet that made my ears ring. I sat in the Honda, engine off, windows down, straining. At first, nothing. Then, at exactly 11:43, my phone clock blinking. Voices. Multiple voices, singing, coming from inside the church. Muffled through the walls but unmistakable. Men, women, children, all harmonizing, slow and deliberate. How great thou art. The Southern gospel cadence sharp and clear in my chest. Heart hammering, I grabbed my recorder and stepped out. The singing swelled as I moved closer, louder but weirdly diffused, like the building itself was spreading the sound. Pressed my ear to the door. Definitely inside, sanctuary space, the same spot I'd been hours ago. I tried the handle. Locked. Walked around the building, checking every window, every side. All sealed. Yet the singing kept flowing, hymn after hymn. The old rugged cross, amazing grace, just as I am. My hands shook so bad I braced the recorder against the wall, capturing every note. 20 minutes of pure, impossible harmony. Then, silence. Complete, crushing silence that made my blood run cold. I stood frozen, every nerve raw. I stayed another hour. Nothing. Around 1 a.m., I drove back to Fairville, heart still rattling. Sleep didn't come. I replayed the recordings over and over, headphones cranked. Human voices, dozens of them, singing hymns like the dead had taken over the sanctuary and refused to let it go. Next morning, I went back to Victoria. She listened, nodded slowly, unsurprised. "That's them," she said. "That's the congregation. They've been singing like that every night since '62. Some think they don't know they're dead, still holding service. Others say they're trying to speak to us, in the only way they know." I asked if anyone had ever tried a scientific approach. Ghost hunters, psychics, university teams. She shook her head sadly. All recorded the same thing you did. Impossible voices. No one explained it. Eventually, they all left. Church keeps its secrets. I returned 3 more times before leaving Hollow Branch, each night hearing the hymns between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., the same songs every time. On the last visit, I decided to push further, unlock the door while the singing was happening. Victoria had warned against it. People who entered during the singing often regretted it, but I needed proof. The moment the door swung open, the music stopped. Dead silence. I stepped inside, flashlight slicing through the darkness. Sanctuary frozen as before. Empty pews, piano silent, dust untouched. But the air had shifted, cold enough to see my breath. The chemical scent stronger, sweet and organic now, like flowers rotting in a vase left too long. I walked 10 steps down the aisle before feeling it. Pressure, like invisible hands pressing against my chest, pushing me back toward the door. Insistent, not violent. Guiding, warning. Then a voice, not through ears, inside my skull. Male, measured, preacher-like. "You do not belong here. This is our time. Please go." I obeyed. Ran to the car, didn't stop until Auburn. My thesis got written, built from recordings, photos, documents, but I never returned to Hollow Branch. Mount Calvary Baptist still stands, still locked, maintained by the Historical Society and whatever forces won't let it rot. And every night, between 10 and 2, 32 voices sing. Hymns they loved in life, in a sanctuary they can never leave. Perfect harmony, human and impossible, filling a space that should have been empty decades ago. It's still there, waiting, singing, watching. The contract hit my inbox in early September. A straightforward gig, wildlife survey in the wiregrass belt near the Alabama line. I was 31 at the time, freelancing as a wildlife surveyor for the State Conservation Department. Mostly deer counts, habitat checks, stuff that dictated hunting limits. Money was solid, work was quiet, and I liked the alone time. Weeks out in the backcountry, just me, my gear, and the forest breathing all around. This assignment? 14 days deep in Concu National Forest, a stretch of old-growth pines and wiregrass meadows that hadn't been properly surveyed in 5 years. The ranger station flagged some odd deer behavior, maybe predator signs, and needed up-to-date population data before approving any logging or land use changes. Routine stuff, except for the casual warning from the ranger when I grabbed my permits. "Don't go poking around that section after dark," he said, almost shrugging. "You'll be fine in daylight, but at night, well, locals steer clear for reasons. Folks see things, hear things. Probably just hogs or bears, but old-timers get jittery." I'd done this work 8 years across half a dozen states. I'd heard that same warning before. Rural legends, local monsters, ways to keep kids from wandering too deep. I thanked him, packed my gear, and drove to the trailhead. The route was a fire road gone wild, more a suggestion of a path than anything else. I parked at the locked gate and hiked 3 miles in, wind brushing through waist-high wiregrass, longleaf pines clawing the sky. Base camp went up in a creekside clearing. A tent, a tiny solar panel, and containers for food and gear. The first 3 days were dull in the good way. I set trail cameras along the perimeter, motion activated, snapped pics of anything moving. Documented plants, took soil samples, mapped trails, counted deer droppings to estimate numbers. Everything looked normal. Deer thriving, coyotes prowling, fox scat here and there, bobcat signs scattered. Nothing unusual. Nothing to explain the ranger's hushed warning. Then came night 4. I downloaded the cameras onto my laptop. Mostly what I expected: deer, raccoons, armadillos, the occasional wild turkey. But 3 cameras on the east edge of the survey area flipped the script. 2 nights in a row, between 2 and 4 a.m., a figure showed up. Tall. Way too tall. 8, maybe 9 feet. Moving upright, bipedal, smooth but unnatural, the posture all wrong for a bear. One shot caught a slight turn toward the camera. Resolution was low, but I swear I saw eyes. Amber, wide-set, glinting in the flash. I told myself it was a person, maybe a hunter, but the proportions were off. Arms dangled past the knees, shoulders broad, head forward on the neck. Hair? Dark, matted, thick. Not human. Day 5, I focused cameras on that stretch, added motion sensor lights around camp, made sure the satellite phone was charged. Ranger station was 15 miles away by trail. Too far if things went sideways. No cell coverage here. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Every snap, every rustle yanked me upright. Around 2:30 a.m., the motion lights tripped. Heart racing, I tore out of the tent, flashlight shaking in my grip. The lights showed nothing. But the smell hit me. Thick, musky, damp, with a rotten bite. And the breathing. Heavy, rhythmic, somewhere past the edge of the lights. Circling camp. I froze. 10 minutes, maybe more. Flashlight sweeping the black. Nothing visible, but I knew something was out there, watching. Tent or no tent, fear would be a mistake. So I stayed, making myself big, shining the beam toward the sound. Slowly, the breathing drifted off, fading into the woods. I didn't sleep again that night. Dawn found me walking camp perimeter. Tracks. Huge. Humanoid shape, 18 inches long, 8 across at the ball, 5 distinct toes, heel strike like a biped. Stride over 6 feet. I photographed, plastered, scaled. The next nights followed the same rhythm. It came out after dark, circling the camp, breathing, low vocalizations, not growls, more a chest-deep rumble. Night 2, 30 yards out. Night 3, handprints on the tent in the morning, massive, 5-fingered, pressed into nylon like someone leaned over me while I slept. Morning of the 4th day, I broke camp. I was done. Survey could wait. I wasn't staying another night. Packing up, I heard trucks. 2 lifted F-250s, mud-smeared, light bars flashing. 4 men stepped out, rifles slung, eyes a mix of worry and, we expected this. The oldest, graybeard, baseball cap reading Coon County Hunters, spoke first. "You the surveyor? Been camping Wiregrass site?" I nodded. He seemed unsurprised. "Been watching, making sure you were okay. Truck here a week, figured you'd run into him." I asked who him was. The men exchanged looks. The bearded one said, "We call him the wiregrass watcher. Folks elsewhere might call him skunk ape, booger, whatever. Been here as long as anyone remembers. My granddad hunted him in the 40s, saw him twice in the 70s. I've tracked him 30 years. Never got close. And truth? Not sure we'd shoot if we could. He's killed livestock, scared hikers, even toppled a logging truck in '89. But he's never killed anyone. We'd like to keep it that way." Another, younger, scar down his cheek. "Forest Service knows. Rangers won't say it, but they know. That's why no patrols here. Hunting permits limited. Keep people out. Keep it quiet. Every few years, someone like you wanders in, ignorant of the stories. He checks you, sees if you're a threat." I showed the trail camera shots, plaster casts. They studied everything without flinching, already aware. The bearded man handed it back. "You'll want to report this. Bring scientists, hunting parties. Don't. Whatever he is, he's been here longer than us. Doesn't bother anyone respecting his turf. Bring attention, blood will get spilled. Prove what we already know." They offered to walk me out. I accepted, rifles raised, scanning trees. Halfway back, bearded man stopped, pointed. On a ridge 200 yards out, massive, 8-foot shadow, matted brown hair, shoulders broad. Watching. No movement, just claiming the territory. 30 seconds later, it turned and vanished into the woods. Impossibly fast. Scarred man whispered, "He's letting you go. Don't come back." I finished the survey from the forest edge. Truck as base, only venturing in daylight. Report filed. Unusual predator activity. Restrict public access. No mention of photos or casts. Stored those on a hard drive in my closet. Never returned to Concu. Some Alabama woods are still home to things older than us, and some lines aren't meant to be crossed. I kept my distance after that. For the next few weeks, I worked the forest edges, logging data, checking cameras, keeping to the daylight hours. Even then, I felt eyes on me. Felt the brush shift with a weight that didn't belong. Every so often, a rustle, a shadow moving faster than it should, and my chest would tighten. I knew it wasn't imagination. Not anymore. I filed my official report with the Department of Conservation. Predator activity, deer counts, habitat notes. I made recommendations to keep public access limited. But I left out the evidence. Those photos, those plaster casts. I didn't need the scrutiny. Didn't need a media circus or scientists poking around where they shouldn't. I knew better. Some things don't take kindly to human curiosity. By the second week, the forest seemed almost alive with attention. Morning hikes revealed more tracks, smaller impressions beside the huge ones, clawed marks along tree trunks, sap torn from bark. Sometimes I'd find tufts of dark fur snagged on branches. Every sighting, every trace felt like a message. You're being watched. One evening, I caught a glimpse from the ridge above the creek. Just a silhouette, hunched and massive, moving against the tree line. I froze. The air felt thick, heavy, like walking underwater. The thing didn't approach, didn't flee. It simply observed, measured, waited. I started camping closer to the forest edge, using the truck as a base. Nights alone out there were brutal. Every snap of twig, every rustle of leaves sent my heart hammering. I slept with a loaded rifle beside me, flashlight within reach, ears straining for the slightest change in the ambient noise. It came out like clockwork. Around 2:30 a.m., I'd hear the deep, wet breath rolling across the clearing, circling my truck. Sometimes it would grunt low, a vibration I felt in my chest more than heard. I never saw it directly at first, only the shadows, the movement in the corner of my vision. But the presence was undeniable, a hulking weight just beyond the edge of light. The third night, it pushed boundaries. I woke to something pressing against the side of the truck. Huge handprints pressed into the metal as if leaning on it to peer inside. The force was enough to make the truck rock slightly. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the rifle, heart hammering, and swept the beam through the clearing. Nothing. Silence. But I knew it had been there, close enough to touch. By the fourth night, I didn't even try to sleep. I stayed alert, watching, listening. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard the footsteps, the soft crunch of pine needles, deliberate and heavy, moving around the perimeter. Then a low rumble, almost a growl, almost a breath, but deeper, more deliberate. The thing was close, circling, testing me, sizing me up. At first light, I hiked the perimeter again. The tracks told the story. Stride lengths over 6 feet, enormous 5-toed prints, claw marks along trees. I made plaster casts of the deepest impressions, photographed everything, measured meticulously. Each trace, each mark, confirmed what I already knew. This creature wasn't a bear, wasn't human. It was something older, primal, a guardian of the forest. That morning, while packing to leave, I heard vehicles. 2 trucks, mud-smeared, lifted rigs, engines low. 4 men stepped out, rifles slung, eyes scanning. The bearded man, gray beard, weathered face, nodded. "You're the surveyor. Wiregrass site?" I confirmed. They knew. Of course they knew. "Been keeping an eye," the old man said. "Truck here a week, figured you'd run into him." He gestured vaguely to the forest. "The Wiregrass Watcher." I asked for clarity. "Scarred man, younger, voice low. Other folks call him Skunk Ape, Booger. Names don't matter. Been here longer than anyone can remember. Killed livestock, scared hikers, even toppled a logging truck in '89. Never touched a person. We'd like to keep it that way." The bearded man's eyes darkened. "Forest Service knows. Rangers won't say officially. No patrols here. Limited hunting permits. Keep people out. Every few years, someone like you wanders in. He checks you, sees if you're a threat." I showed the camera shots, plaster casts. No surprise on their faces. Expected. The bearded man returned them. "You'll want to bring scientists, hunters, whatever. Don't. He's been here longer than all of us. Respect him. Leave him alone. No one gets hurt. Mess with that. Blood gets spilled. Maybe you. Maybe him. For what? To prove what we already know?" They offered to escort me back. I agreed, rifles at the ready. Halfway to the trailhead, the bearded man pointed. There it was. Massive, 8 feet tall, hair matted, shoulders wide enough for a bear. Standing still, staring at us. The air pulsed with its presence. 30 seconds passed. Then it turned, moving into the forest with impossible speed. Scarred man muttered, "He's letting you go. This is his home. Don't come back." I finished the survey from the forest fringe, daylight only. Report filed. Predator activity. Restricted access. The photos, the plaster casts, I kept them locked away. Never shared. Some parts of Alabama, some forests, are still home to things older than us. Some boundaries aren't meant to be crossed. I haven't been back to Concu. I don't plan to. When I drive past the outskirts now, the hairs on my arms still rise. I think of the wiregrass watcher, silent, immense, watching. A relic of a forest that remembers a world before humans carved it up. And I know the truth. Some things in the woods are meant to stay wild, meant to remain unseen. And some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. I keep the hard drive tucked in a box in my closet. The images, the casts, the memories, they're mine alone. I don't need anyone else to believe. I saw it, felt it, heard it breathing, felt its eyes on me. Some nights I swear I can still hear it moving, deep in the distance of some dream. Watching, waiting. And I know some corners of the earth are still ruled by things that existed before us, things that don't forgive trespassers. And Alabama, God help it, has a few of those corners left. I was 27 when I signed on with Crestwood Renewal Center, a private psych facility tucked way out in the hills of Raven County, about 40 minutes south of Lexington. I'd been grinding 3 years as a psych nurse in a Birmingham hospital, 12-hour shifts, short-staffed chaos, and the same patients spinning in and out because the system never actually fixed anything. So when Crestwood dangled better pay, calmer caseloads, and innovative therapeutic programs, I jumped before I even looked at the fine print. The place looked like old Southern money trying real hard to feel humble. A renovated plantation-era mansion sat at the heart of 40 acres of oak and pine. Behind it, a modern clinical wing stretched out like a gleaming spine. Therapy rooms, offices, labs. The grounds were manicured within an inch of their life. Paths winding through curated gardens. A perfect little pond where patients were supposed to reflect. Everything screamed wealth and secrets. The kind of place rich families used when they were done pretending regular psychiatry could save their troubled kids, spouses, or siblings. My supervisor was Marilyn, mid-50s, steel-gray hair sprayed into submission, that super-controlled vibe that made you feel like nothing chaotic ever touched her. She walked me through the place my first day, showing off private rooms with fancy furniture, sleek bathrooms, and sunlight pouring in like we were in some wellness retreat instead of a psych center. The therapy rooms looked like tech showrooms, machines humming quietly, glowing panels for light therapy, strange booths she called sensory integration chambers. They looked like props from a low-budget sci-fi flick. "We treat a very specific group here," Marilyn said, heels clicking on polished floors. "Our clients have the means to pursue approaches traditional insurance doesn't cover. Most have tried standard care with no success. Depression, anxiety, addiction, personality issues. Our program blends medication with targeted behavioral reconditioning. Our outcomes are remarkable." I asked her what made their approach work when everyone else had failed. She gave this practiced smile, the kind people in PR training learn. "We aren't limited by conventional doctrine," she said. "Our founder, Dr. Vance, developed methods in the 70s that were ahead of their time. Structured aversion work, intensive counseling, medication support, and what we call environmental shaping. We create an ecosystem where unhealthy behaviors simply can't survive." There were never more than a dozen patients at a time, all tucked into the clinical wing where I spent most shifts. The weirdest thing hit me early on. They all acted the same. Not same diagnosis, same vibe. Flat, robotic. They answered questions like they were reading from cue cards. No spark, no pushback. No soul. They moved through their routines with this eerie mechanical calm. There was a young woman, Lena, in for treatment-resistant depression and self-harm. 5 weeks into her program when I arrived, with 3 to go. On med rounds, she'd smile politely and tell me she was doing much better, that she understood her behaviors were not appropriate, that she'd learned healthier ways to cope. The words were right. The eyes were dead. When I pushed for details, what exactly helped her, she repeated almost the same stuff Marilyn had told me on day one, like she was parroting a pitch she didn't understand. Then there was Mark, early 40s, admitted for violent outbursts. 7 weeks in, same flat tone, same blank compliance. He told me he'd learned to control inappropriate emotions and recognized that his past reactions were unacceptable. No warmth, no frustration, no relief. Just a lifeless statement. I asked if he looked forward to going home. He said yes, but it sounded like a machine answering a survey. After 2 weeks, I stopped sleeping right. Something was deeply wrong with these people. Not healed, hollowed out. I combed through their charts during downtime. Med lists were normal enough. SSRIs, benzodiazepines, mood stabilizers. But scattered through each file were notes about sessions labeled only Protocol 7 or Protocol 12, all taking place in something called the lower level, a part of the building I'd never seen, always during the night shift. I asked Marilyn about it, trying to play it cool, framing it like I just wanted to understand the treatment flow better. Her smooth demeanor cracked, just a flicker. "You were hired to provide nursing care, not to question the treatment methodologies," she said. "The lower-level work is proprietary and handled by Dr. Vance's senior team. If that arrangement is uncomfortable for you, you may need to reconsider your position." That was the end of that conversation, but I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. The lower-level door sat in the admin hallway, a heavy steel thing totally out of sync with Crestwood's polished interiors. No keycard for me. Never saw a patient go down there. Never saw them come up. But the chart said they were going down 3 or 4 nights a week. So I started trading shifts, pushing myself onto nights so I could watch. 3 more weeks passed before something finally happened. Around 2 in the morning, Marilyn walked in with 2 orderlies I'd never met before. Big guys, quiet, eyes straight ahead. They went to get Mark, told him it was time for his protocol. He stood, calm as a mannequin, and followed. I watched them lead him into the admin hall toward the steel door. 10 minutes later, I found a reason to walk past. Forgot something in a supply closet. I pressed my ear to the cold metal. And I heard it. Deep machinery humming. Voices speaking in low, controlled tones. And underneath that, a long, muffled sound. Could have been a person. Could have been something else. Too warped to tell. The noises kept going for nearly an hour. When they finally brought Mark back, he was upright and uninjured. But his eyes, they had that same empty glaze, like something important had been unplugged. That was the moment I knew. Whatever was happening down there had nothing to do with healing. A week after I heard the sounds behind the steel door, we admitted a new patient. Casey, 23, admitted for severe anxiety with compulsive episodes. She came from money, like most of Crestwood's clientele, but she didn't have that brittle, overmanaged look most of them wore. She seemed genuinely scared, eyes darting like she expected someone to follow her inside. On her second night, during vitals, she whispered, "Don't let them take me down there." My stomach clenched. I didn't ask how she knew. I just told her she was safe for now and kept my voice steady, even though my hands shook. Over the next few days, she told me pieces. Never directly, always in quick, tense bursts when no one else was around. Her parents had sent her to a similar facility in Georgia 2 years earlier. She said they put her in programs at night, in rooms underground, where she couldn't see anything but lights behind glass. She said they called it therapy, but it didn't feel like therapy. It felt like conditioning. "Crestwood uses the same model," she whispered. "Same founder, same protocols, same everything." I checked the shared database across sister facilities, something managers never expect nurses to actually use. Sure enough, Crestwood had 3 connected branches in other southern states, all founded by Dr. Malcolm Vance, all privately owned, all specializing in advanced behavioral restructuring. My heartbeat thudded in my throat. Around this time, staff started watching me closer. Marilyn moved my locker, reassigned my med card, suddenly wanted regular check-ins about my comfort level. I was being monitored. The air around me grew tight and watchful. Then, on my 37th day at Crestwood, everything crashed at once. They scheduled Casey for her first lower-level session. They scheduled me on the same night. And they assigned me to escort duty. I'd never been allowed near the lower-level procedures before. Now they wanted me right there, close, within reach. It didn't feel like trust. It felt like a test. I tried to act normal as we walked down the admin hallway. Marilyn trailed behind us, clipboard tucked tight against her chest. The orderlies waited by the steel door, same 2 from before, stone-faced, eyes empty. Casey gripped my arm with white-knuckled panic, whispering, "Please, please don't let them." The steel door clanged open. Cold air rushed out, impossibly cold for any interior room. It carried a sharp, chemical bite, something metallic and sweet, like sterilizer mixed with spoiled flowers. Inside was a long hallway, dark except for recessed lights along the floor. The walls looked like poured concrete, thickly reinforced. Not a single window. Not a single camera visible, which somehow made it worse. They called it therapy. It felt like a facility built to contain dangerous research. They led Casey to a room halfway down. I followed, throat tight, palms sweating through my gloves. Inside, the walls were layered with soundproofing panels, thick and ridged like a recording booth. A single chair sat in the middle, strapped, bolted, padded. Not a therapy room, a chamber. Dr. Vance himself waited inside, white coat, silver hair, raw charisma that made your skin crawl once you saw the rot behind it. He greeted me like we were old friends. "So glad you're assisting tonight. Observational experience is the strongest teacher." I wanted to scream, but I forced a smile and nodded. Casey was shaking so violently the metal cuffs rattled. They strapped her in anyway. The lights dimmed. A low hum started, coming from the walls, the floor, everywhere. Like the building itself was waking up. My head buzzed. My vision thickened at the edges. "What is this?" I whispered. Vance smiled, too calm. "Exposure realignment. We break the pathways that reinforce maladaptive fear, then guide the patient toward a healthier cognitive pattern." He tapped a control pad. A blinding floodlight hit Casey from behind a tinted glass panel. She recoiled, crying out. The hum deepened, vibrating my teeth. "This isn't therapy," I said. Vance didn't even look at me. "It's progress." And then it happened, subtle at first, then terrifying. Casey's voice shifted. Not the tone, the rhythm. Her panic softened into a flat, monotone recitation. "I understand my behaviors are inappropriate. I understand my reactions are unacceptable. I understand." She repeated the lines over and over, each time more mechanical, more drained, more like the others. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. This was what they did, night after night, protocol after protocol, hollowing people out from the inside. I turned to run. The door slammed. Orderlies blocked the exit. Marilyn stood in the corner, eyes cold. "You know too much now," she said softly. "We can't afford another non-compliant staff member." Another. My blood froze. Vance stepped toward me. "Don't worry. The process is easier when you don't resist." I realized with a sick lurch, they hadn't brought me here to observe. I was the next patient. My fight or flight kicked in so hard, my vision tunneled. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a metal tray, and hurled it at the control panel. Sparks burst. The hum faltered. The light behind the glass flickered. Casey snapped out of her trance, screaming. Chaos erupted. I shoved past the orderlies while they flinched at the electrical crackle, bolted out the door, sprinted down the hallway as alarms split the air. Marilyn yelled behind me. Someone grabbed my sleeve. I tore free. I made it to the stairwell, slammed through, and didn't stop running until I hit the night door that led outside. It wasn't supposed to open without a key. It opened. Maybe someone forgot to arm it. Maybe it jammed. Maybe something else wanted me gone. I don't know. I just ran. I drove until sunrise, quit by email. Lawyers from Crestwood contacted me twice with non-disclosure threats. Then they vanished. And the facility? Still running, still private, still successful. The patients who come out look cured. But I know better. They don't look healed. They look emptied, reconstructed, rewritten. And somewhere in that underground wing, the hum is still running. I was 33 when it hit me. Hauling loads across the southeast, mostly auto parts, from factories in Tennessee down to distribution hubs in Mobile and Birmingham. Honest work, paid enough to keep the wheels turning. I liked the isolation, the long stretch of asphalt, the low hum of tires, the static chatter of truck stops, always the same small talk about weather and traffic. I could get lost in it, let it swallow me whole. I'd been running these roads for 6 years. Every rest stop, every shortcut, every diner I could trust for a cup of coffee that wouldn't send me running to the John. I knew where the grub was solid and where it'd rot your guts. That night? Thursday in October. Crisp, cold, the kind where the air snaps once the sun dips. I was rolling along Route 80, slicing through the Black Belt, wide stretches of prairie, pine forests thick enough to swallow you whole, towns few and far between. The dark between them wasn't just night, it was a void. My GPS had been jerking all evening, rerouting for no reason, showing roads that didn't exist, then correcting itself like nothing happened. Glitch, I told myself. Maybe it needed an update. Didn't matter, I knew this route blindfolded. Around 10:30 p.m., 20 miles east of Demopolis, the truck started dragging. Not a full-on breakdown, just sluggish. Like my foot was stuck in molasses. Engine temp normal. Dashboard lights all sleeping. But the rig was fighting me. I eased onto a shoulder wide enough to breathe, cut the engine, sat in the cab, eyes tracing the black nothing outside. Restarted her. Engine hummed like nothing was wrong. Put her in gear, tried to merge back onto the highway. Dragged again. Felt like I was towing a load twice what I'd got. Flashlight out. Walked the rig. Tires fine. Load solid. Nothing hanging or dragging. Nothing visibly wrong. Then I saw it. A side road. Dirt. Narrow. Forking off the asphalt maybe 50 yards behind me. I'd run this stretch 100 times. Never seen it. No GPS, no maps, nothing in the cab's paper stack. Just a raw track swallowed by the pine forest. And it had always been there, somehow invisible until now. I don't know why I turned onto it. Maybe I figured it'd spit me back onto the highway, bypass the drag. Maybe I was just pissed off and not thinking straight. But I fired up the engine and rolled onto it. The truck ran smooth. No drag, no hiccups, just normal. Like the last 10 minutes never happened. The dirt road twisted, tight enough that branches clawed at the trailer. 10 miles, maybe. Then the trees broke open. Lights, street lamps, buildings, small town glow. But this shouldn't exist. Not on my GPS. Not on any map. Not in 6 years of driving this route. I slowed, confused, curious. Rolled into what could have been Main Street, if Main Street had been frozen in time. 30, 40 buildings circling a square. Courthouse or town hall in the center. Everything off. Not abandoned. Not modern. A living 1950s diorama. Chevy Bel Airs, Ford Fairlanes gleaming under streetlights. Storefronts with hand-painted signs like time forgot. Woolworth 5 and dime. A pharmacy with a soda fountain. Movie theater marquee advertising a flick my granddad once mentioned from his childhood. People on the sidewalks. Dozens. Moving, shopping, chatting. All dressed like film extras. Men in fedoras. Women in full skirts, hair perfect. Teens in Letterman jackets, poodle skirts. They didn't notice my rig. My semi, a beast from another century. Out of place and glaring. I parked outside a diner, cut the engine, sat still, trying to breathe. Phone dead. No signal. Not odd for Alabama backwoods, but still. GPS blacked out. Blank. Dead. Like it had never existed. I stepped out, walked to the diner. Door swung open like stepping through a veil. Inside? 1950s in every inch. Red vinyl booths, chrome-edged counter with spinning stools, jukebox in the corner, Buddy Holly, soft enough to blend, loud enough to haunt. Heads turned, confusion flashed, smiles polite, then back to meals. A waitress, mid-20s, blonde hair perfect, rolled and pinned, brought a menu. "Table?" she asked. "Just passing through," I said. "Where exactly am I?" Her smile tightened, a flicker of hesitation. "Riverside, hun. Best little town in Sumter County. Lost?" "Must be," I said. "Wrong turn off Route 80. I ended up here." Her glance flicked to a man at the counter. Gray hair, 1950s sheriff uniform. He stood, stretched a hand. "I'm Sheriff Calloway," he said. "Came in off Route 80? Interesting. Route 80 doesn't lead straight here. You must have found the old Forest Service road. Tricky to find your way back once you're in. Sit. Coffee. We'll figure a way to get you out." I sat, more to understand than to drink. 2 cups arrived, unasked. I looked closer. Newspaper at the counter, October 18th, 1956. Menu prices insane. Burger, 35 cents. Coffee, nickel. Not actors, not tourists. Real. Breathing. Living. I asked the sheriff straight, "What year is it?" He studied me, worry, maybe pity. 2024, son. Same as everywhere else. But Riverside, we're different. Hold on to the old ways. Keep things as they were. Makes us special. I pointed at the cars, the clothes, the paper, the prices. He leaned close, voice low. "You're right. Something happened here." 1956. Coker Mining Company, 5 miles north. Hit a gas pocket no one knew. Spread through underground passages, venting over town for days. People started feeling weird. Losing time, reality slipping. Some left. Called it cursed. But we stayed. Something changed. Temporal weirdness. Technically 2024, but we live like 1956. That's when the shift happened. "You're not the first outsider," he said, eyes dark. "Every few years someone hits that road. We decide what to do. Most, Fed, pointed back to Route 80. Leave thinking it's just some kooky historical town. Nobody believes them. Some people have nothing left, nowhere to go. We let them stay." I asked about the ones who stayed. He gestured around the diner. "Become part of Riverside. Learn to exist between times. Not perfect, not easy. People are born, die, age like anywhere else, but insulated from the world out there. It's chaos, speed, rot. Safe, peaceful. Some have been here decades, chose this over the world they left." I told him I needed the truck, the route. He nodded, walked me out. Directions, precise. Deviate and I might never leave. Time here, not kind to outsiders. I thanked him. Engine fired. Followed every instruction. Strange, slow crawl. Felt like the air thickened, pushing back. Eventually, asphalt, reflective markers, Route 80. I merged, dizzy, disoriented. GPS flickered back to life. Route recalculating like nothing had happened. Next day I rolled in the mobile, dropped the load, tried to shove Riverside out of my head. But it stuck. That dirt road, the lights, the people who shouldn't have been there. 3 days I spent hunting that side road again, Route 80, both ways. Every turnout, every patch of shadowed pine. Nothing. Just asphalt, nothing more. Like the road never existed. Or maybe it wasn't meant to. A doorway that opens and closes on rules I couldn't read. I dug into Riverside, Sumter County, Coker Mining Company. The town had existed, population 340. Abandoned in '58 after some mining disaster. Everything Sheriff Calloway said lined up. The gas, the weird experiences, the exodus. But records? Said the town emptied, gone by '59. Nothing about people living in some 1950s bubble in the middle of 2024. I keep driving Route 80 when my routes take me that way. Eyes peeled for that lost road, though I don't know what I'd do if I saw it again. Sometimes I think about Calloway's offer, leaving the modern world's grind, stepping into a slower, quieter life. But I know better. Nothing is ever simple. Every choice carries weight. Places caught between times. They aren't for people still tethered to the moving world. Riverside exists somewhere. Maybe everywhere. Maybe nowhere. A town vanished from maps, but never quite erased from reality. Driving back through the Black Belt, the memory of the forest road haunts me. It wasn't just a shortcut. It was a trap, a doorway, a test. That night, the truck dragging, the world bending around me, it all had a purpose. A place like Riverside doesn't just appear. It waits, hidden, patient, watching who comes close enough to notice. I think about the diner, the jukebox playing Buddy Holly, the smell of frying bacon and coffee. The polite confusion in the faces of people who'd been living in a ghost town that was somehow still alive. That blend of normalcy and wrongness creeps into my dreams. The forest road, the town frozen in time, Sheriff Calloway's careful explanations. They weren't meant to make sense. They were warnings. A life trapped between years is seductive, safe, beautiful even. But it carries shadows you can't see until it's too late. I felt that tug, the pull of leaving everything behind, stepping into a world that didn't move. And maybe one day someone will. But I didn't. I chose the highway, the noise, the endless hum of asphalt under tires. Riverside remained behind me, quiet, patient, existing just out of reach. Every mile I drove, every town I passed, the memory followed. Not real, not gone, just waiting. I tell the story sometimes to drivers at truck stops. Some nod politely, eyes glazed. Some laugh, chalk it up to fatigue and highway monotony. Nobody gets it. Nobody cares. Riverside doesn't need them to. It waits, and it moves in its own time, untouched by maps, by GPS, by calendars. I know I could have stayed, maybe even been happy there. But that's not my life. My life is moving forward, even when the forward is just endless highways and the white lines blurring into each other at 2 a.m. Riverside is a promise, a threat, a temptation. A place that asks for nothing, but gives everything you can't take back once you step inside. And sometimes, late at night, when the road is quiet and the hum of the tires is the only sound, I swear I see the headlights of those old cars in my rearview mirror. Just for a second. Gone when I blink. Riverside is still out there. Somewhere in the Black Belt. Maybe behind some unmarked dirt track. A town that slipped out of history, but never out of reality. A reminder that some doors are never meant to open, and some towns never meant to leave. I was 28 when that case file hit my desk at the Alabama Department of Insurance. A manila folder thick with yellowed paper and redacted notes. 3 years it took someone to notice the pattern. I worked fraud cases, mostly fake fender benders, padded property claims. Small-time scams that racked up millions but never made the news. This one, though. This one felt different the second I cracked it open. 7 drownings in 12 years. All within a tight 5-mile stretch of the Coosa River running past this tiny town, Lockhart Springs. Maybe 600 people living in rolling hills and thick woods, river running slow and wide, deceptively calm. At first glance, the deaths looked random. A tourist from Georgia in 2009, a Tennessee businessman in 2012, a couple from Mississippi in 2015, 2 more out-of-state visitors in 2018 and 2021. Nothing tying them together, at least not on the surface. But the numbers don't lie. Actuarial reports flagged it. All 7 had bought life insurance within 18 months of their deaths. All rented boats from the same outfit, Coosa River Adventures. And all death certificates bore the same signature, Dr. Eugene Whitfield, Lockhart's only physician and coroner. That alone set off alarms. Janet, my boss, 20 years in fraud investigations, tossed the file at me with a shrug. "Probably nothing," she said. "Small towns, one doctor doing all the coroner stuff, tourists buying policies before they go out on the water. Routine, really." But she still sent me down there, told me to talk to the boat rental guy, poke through the police reports. Something about the pattern didn't sit right with her, and I knew it didn't sit right with me either. I rolled into Lockhart Springs late Tuesday morning, driving Route 231 south from Montgomery, then weaving through county roads that twisted past pine forests and patchy farmland. The town popped out of the trees like a memory you half forget. Buildings huddled along the river, Main Street dead-ending at a boat launch and marina. Coosa River Adventures sat right on the water, a weathered wooden shack with a dozen aluminum fishing boats tied to a creaking dock, rocking gently in the current. Joshua Brennan, the owner, met me at the door. Sun-baked skin, lean frame, the kind you earn from decades of hands-on labor. He smiled, polite, when I introduced myself and mentioned insurance paperwork connected to river accidents. But the moment I brought up the drownings, His grin flickered. Just a second. Then he squared himself, went back to friendly. "Terrible stuff," he muttered, shaking his head. "We've run this operation for 30 years. My old man before me, 20 more. Those 7? Only fatalities ever tied to our boats. The river's generally safe. We point folks to the easy sections. Most accidents? People don't follow directions. Alcohol. Life jackets worn wrong. Things happen. I've handed over every doc, every report the authorities ever asked for. I asked to see the rental logs. He didn't hesitate. Clean files, signed liability waivers, equipment checklists, laminated maps marking recommended routes. Everything above board, tight, neat. Life jackets inspected regularly, hanging in a shed in perfect order. Professional, polished, too perfect. Later, I sat with Sheriff Thomas Caldwell at the tiny station. Heavy-set guy in his early 60s, polite but tense when I questioned the drownings. Each case investigated, bodies pulled in under 24 hours, autopsies by Dr. Whitfield confirming drowning as cause of death. No foul play. Caldwell bristled subtly when I suggested anything might be missing, as if even entertaining suspicion was an insult to his town. That night, I checked into a small Victorian bed and breakfast on the outskirts, run by a Mrs. Hughes. Sweet smile, tidy home, Southern charm dialed up to 11. Over dinner, I mentioned the drownings. Her cheeriness vanished, fork clinking softly against her plate. "You're not the first to ask," she said, voice low. 3 years ago, some woman from a victim advocacy group spent a week here asking questions. Left with nothing. Same as you will. This is a good town. Joshua Brennan is a good man. Tragedies happen, but it ain't murder. Accidents cluster sometimes. Outsiders never get it. Sleep wouldn't come. Everything about the town felt off. The sheriff defensive, Mrs. Hughes guarded, Brennan too polished, records too perfect. I cracked my laptop and dove into the victims' backgrounds, hunting for links beyond the insurance. That's when it hit me. All 7 had stayed at the very bed and breakfast I was in. And all had been referred to Coosa River Adventures by Mrs. Hughes herself. Social media posts, travel blogs, insurance notes, all pointed the same way. Then I traced the policies. All sold by the same agent, Robert Carson, working out of a small Lockhart Springs office. Nephew of Mrs. Hughes. Next morning, I showed up at Carson's storefront. Clean suit, neat tie, 40-ish, out of place in the sleepy town. I asked about the victim's policies. He pulled files with that same meticulous precision Brennan had. "I sell life insurance," he said, smooth. "People vacationing think about mortality, want to protect their families. I make sure they're covered. Tragic if something happens, but suspicious? No. Claims filed, paid, by the book. That's my job." I asked why vacationers suddenly bought life insurance. He shrugged, easy. Who knows? Maybe they'd been thinking about it. Maybe my aunt mentioned I sold policies. Being on the river makes folks think about safety. I don't question why. They just want coverage. That afternoon, I rented a boat from Coosa River Adventures, wanting first-hand experience. Brennan gave me the safety briefing, handed a life jacket, pointed out the recommended route. I pushed off, tracing the river downstream past the spots where bodies had been recovered. 3 miles out, water started seeping in through the bottom. Slow at first, then enough to cover the floor in an inch of river water in 20 minutes. I checked the drain plug. Loosened, not gone, but just enough to flood. Grabbed the life jacket to bail. Noticed the straps had been partially cut. Would have failed under strain. Heart hammering, I fixed the plug, bailed frantically, and motored back, breathing ragged. Brennan waited on the dock, expression blank, taking the life jacket and hanging it back in the shed like nothing had happened. I drove straight to the FBI office in Birmingham, 90 miles north, and laid it all out. 6 weeks later, federal investigators had enough. Arrests came for Brennan, Carson, Mrs. Hughes, Dr. Whitfield, even Caldwell, though the sheriff died of a heart attack before trial. The case unfolded like a nightmare stretched across 15 years. The method was viciously simple, almost surgical in its cruelty. Mrs. Hughes would spot tourists traveling alone or in small groups, people who wouldn't be missed if they vanished. She'd nudge them toward her nephew, Robert Carson, who sold life insurance policies with elevated death benefits, naming the victims' families as beneficiaries. Then she'd point them to Joshua Brennan's boats. Joshua's sabotage was methodical. Drain plugs loosened just enough to let water creep in. Life jackets sliced through the straps so they'd snap under pressure. Weight compartments shifted to tip the boats into instability. He picked river stretches where the current was deep, the banks isolated. A small error, a slip, a slight panic, enough to send someone under, and the river would swallow them before anyone could help. Dr. Whitfield? Coroner and town doctor. He'd sign off on the deaths as accidents, no questions asked. Sheriff Caldwell? He'd keep the investigations shallow, letting tragedy be tragedy, protecting the town and the scheme. And every payout went through Carson and the conspirators, who divvied up the money quietly. 11 confirmed murders, 15 years, $3.2 million pocketed. The trial hit like a lightning strike. Families of victims learned their loved ones hadn't just drowned. They'd been hunted, carefully led into death for money. Brennan, the river killer, got life without parole. Carson took 40 years. Mrs. Hughes, who had turned state's witness, got 25. Whitfield lost his license and did 15. Caldwell never made it. Heart attack claimed him before the gavel fell, but his silence had already condemned him morally. I walked away from Lockhart Springs changed. I don't dig into insurance fraud anymore. Not the way I did. Not the way I saw the blood that can gather behind polite facades and tidy paperwork. Sometimes I think about that river. How ordinary people can turn monstrous when profit mixes with opportunity. How the current hides more than just the water it carries. Coosa River still flows. Tourists probably still rent boats, though the marina never reopened. I wonder if they know what those waters held, what they could have swallowed, what secrets drift quietly beneath the surface. Some places, they never wash clean. The past doesn't stay buried, even when money and law try to bury it. Every time I drive through central Alabama now, I pass the stretch of Lockhart Springs by the river, and it feels like the air holds a little of that old dread. The town looks sleepy, ordinary, but the memory of that perfect, rehearsed town, its smiles hiding calculation, its kindness masking malice, still lingers. I can't forget the way Mrs. Hughes clinked her fork that night, the sharpness in her eyes when she said outsiders would never understand. And I never will. I was 25 when I kicked off the podcast, calling it Southern Shadows. It was a side project, a way to chase the weird and forgotten, digging into ghost stories and legends that clung to the backroads of Alabama and the surrounding states. My day job in tech support paid the bills, but it chewed my soul dry. The podcast gave me a reason to hit the road, to sit in tiny diners and talk to old-timers about stories their parents told them. Stories that were slipping away as young folks fled these dying towns. My audience was small, maybe 2,000 regulars, but loyal. They appreciated that I treated these stories seriously, as history, as culture, not just campfire tales to spook tourists. The tale of the screaming woman on County Road 47 came up a lot in my research on Cherokee County. It was one of those legends everyone knew, but nobody could trace back to its origin. Details had smoothed out over the decades, faded like chalk in the rain. But the bones of the story were the same everywhere. A woman murdered by her husband in the 70s, back when law enforcement was thin and justice often got handled quietly, privately. She'd been killed in a rage, though the reasons shifted depending on who told it. Her body vanished, buried somewhere along the stretch of road that now carried the number 47. And her screams? Folks swore they still echoed on certain nights. Always between 2 and 3 a.m. Always in that half-mile stretch. I rolled into Cherokee County on a Friday in September, aiming to spend the weekend tracking leads, interviewing locals, maybe camping out on 47 to catch what people described. The county seat, center, was small. A historic courthouse square, a diner where everyone knew everyone else's business. I parked at Millie's and slid into a corner booth, asking questions, telling people I was a podcaster chasing old stories. The answers came back the same, over and over. 8 people, ages 30 to 80, all swore they'd heard her. The screams. A woman's voice, high and raw, screaming for help. Real fear in it, not a prank, not an animal. 30 to 45 seconds, then dead silence, thick, heavy, pressing. And always between mile markers 14 and 15, dead in the wee hours. An old man named Joshua Patterson offered the most detail. Claimed he came from one of the families tied to the original incident. According to him, her name had been Eliza. Her husband, William, beat her to death after discovering she planned to leave him, take the kids north to relatives. He buried her in the woods, lied to neighbors that she'd run off with a traveling salesman. People believed it. Women leaving families was scandal enough to shut mouths. But Eliza's sister suspected the truth. Tried for years to get the law involved. Nothing happened. William remarried within a year, lived 30 more years, dying in his sleep at 68. The oddest part? Reports of the screaming didn't start until the 1920s, 40 years after Eliza's death, according to Joshua. His grandfather swore he heard them in 1927, terrified enough he refused to travel that road at night for the rest of his life. Joshua agreed to show me the exact stretch, though he made it clear he wasn't spending the night. We drove out around 7 p.m., the sun sinking through pine trees lining both sides of the narrow road. Mile markers 14 to 15 were completely isolated. Dense forest, no houses, a few dirt turnoffs with no trespassing signs. He pointed out a clearing, 20 yards off the road. That's where William's house stood, he said. Burned down in the 50s, only the foundation left. The spot where Eliza died? Just beyond that, near the old creek bed. He suggested parking in the clearing, safer than the road. When he left, I set up my gear. Microphones at different angles and distances. A digital recorder with fresh batteries and a backup. Phone ready for video. I settled in my car, windows down, waiting. First couple hours were quiet. Just the usual night sounds. Insects, wind through pines, a distant car on the highway. I tweaked notes, edited audio, fought the urge to check my phone. It had zero signal anyway. Around midnight, the insects went silent. Not fading naturally. Dead silence, abrupt, like someone had cut the power. I grabbed my phone and started filming, sweeping it slowly across the tree line. Nothing. Just darkness and that heavy, oppressive quiet. Then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., it hit. A woman's scream, starting low, rising high, saturated with terror. Real, raw fear. 30 to 40 seconds of pure, desperate shouting. I could pick out words through the terror. "Help me! Please, God! Somebody help!" Then silence. Thick, suffocating silence. I sat frozen, hands shaking, almost dropping the phone. The recorder had captured everything. The levels spiked on the display, proof it wasn't my imagination. I spent the next hour playing it back, headphones in, trying to parse it. Female voice, middle-aged, accent old-fashioned but not alien. Underneath, a rhythmic sound. Footsteps? Impacts? Hard to tell. Something moving, repeating. I went back 4 more nights over 2 weeks. Screams on 3 of them. Always 30 to 45 seconds. Same desperate energy. Then the 4th night, something twisted. After the scream ended, I heard my own voice from the woods. Not a recording, not an echo. My voice, screaming words I'd never spoken. Please, anyone, I need help. I'm dying here. It grew louder, matching the woman's screams I'd captured before. Then, silence again. The next morning, I drove back into Center, my stomach tight. First stop, the Cherokee County Historical Society. I met Victoria Hayes, the director, a sharp-eyed woman who could smell history like most people smelled coffee. I asked about County Road 47, the area I'd camped, recorded, nearly lost my mind over. She pulled out maps and property records stretching back to the 1850s. According to her, that stretch of road was a graveyard in slow motion. Not just Eliza, but 6 other deaths recorded over a century and a half. A man freezing to death in 1891. A woman crushed in a carriage accident in 1904. 3 separate car crashes between 1956 and 1989. And a missing hiker from 2003 who'd vanished without a trace. I asked about the land itself, any geological oddities that could mess with sound. She nodded toward the old creek bed near the clearing. It used to feed underground channels, little caves beneath the surface. Maybe the acoustics amplified sounds, made them carry, made them weird. Physical explanation, sure. But that didn't account for my voice, screaming words I'd never uttered. I took the recordings to an audio engineer in Birmingham. I wanted a professional take. He looked at the waveforms, shook his head. The woman's screams were genuine. Outdoors, environmental acoustics matched the location. And then, my voice. Not manufactured. Not an echo. Verified by frequency analysis compared to my podcast episodes. But it came from multiple spots at once, like I'd been 4 places at the same time. He didn't say much after that. Just nodded. Quiet. I contacted the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department. Played the recordings for them. Faces shifted. Skepticism, unease, then resignation. Deputy Andrew Morris told me something that made my blood run cold. 5 years earlier, after the 2003 missing person case, they'd run ground-penetrating radar along that stretch of 47. Found anomalies. Spots that screamed human remains. 6 locations within a half-mile of where I'd recorded. Budget and lack of probable cause meant they hadn't dug yet. Files were kept, marked historical interest. The episode aired with all the warnings I could muster. The response was instant. Downloads through the roof. People couldn't get enough of the screams, the history, the horror. Within a month, Cherokee County authorized funding to dig. And what they found chilled me. 6 sets of human remains. 3 identified through DNA, people missing for decades. The hiker from 2003. A woman gone in 1977. A man vanished in 1989. The others were too degraded, but estimated late 1800s to early 1900s. One skeleton, female, estimated 30 to 40 at death, bore blunt force trauma to the skull. Couldn't be proven definitively as murder, but the pattern screamed violence. The road itself, that cursed stretch, had swallowed them all over decades, centuries. And the screams hadn't stopped. People still wrote to me, locals, visitors, emails pouring in. They said the same thing. Between 2 and 3 a.m., same half-mile. But now it wasn't just Eliza. Multiple voices, all terrified, all pleading, all alive in that echo of horror. The road was a grave, and somehow, a speaker. I never went back. Don't need to. The recordings are enough. But at night, I think about them. Those voices trapped in the air, the trees, the earth. Places can carry memory, imprint trauma. The world can remember suffering even when humans forget. Cherokee County maintains the area now. Signs warn drivers about its history, ask them to report strange happenings. I don't know if it makes folks feel safe or just keeps them awake at night. I've learned to leave some mysteries alone, to respect what lingers where we can't fully see. County Road 47 is alive with the echoes of the dead, whispers of agony and terror looping endlessly in the dark. And sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I swear I can hear them even from miles away, faint, desperate, calling for help they'll never get. The thing about horror, real horror, is it doesn't need a face. It doesn't need a mask. It's not about jump scares or cheap thrills. It's about memory, persistence. It's about the world holding on to every crime, every death, every moment of raw fear, and refusing to let it go. County Road 47 does that. It keeps score. It screams for them all. And I hear it. I was 30 when I finally traded in the fluorescent-lit hallways of apartment complexes for the scent of pine and dirt. After 8 years running security in Mobile, I needed something that felt alive. Something that connected me to the real world, not fake alarms and camera feeds. That's how I landed as a park ranger trainee with the U.S. Forest Service, posted to a remote station in Talladega National Forest, East Central Alabama. The training program was 6 months, and I'd be under Ranger Daniel Cooper, 20 years deep in this forest, knew every ridge and ravine. The first day felt routine. Wildlife management, trail maintenance, fire prevention, visitor safety. But then, Daniel pulled out a binder that made the air feel heavier. Missing persons reports. 32 of them, stretching back to 1981. All hikers, gone in a 10-mile radius around our station. Vanished. No bodies, no evidence. Families left with nothing. Talladega isn't just trees and trails, Daniel said, spreading the papers across the table. 32 disappearances in 43 years. Officially, it's accidents. People get lost, fall into ravines, sinkholes, or die from exposure. But the pattern? It's nasty. If you're working here, you gotta know what's out there. I flipped through the reports. Victims ranged from 19 to 67. Experienced hikers, casual walkers. Summer, winter, rain, shine. Different trails, different times. But one thing stood out, something that set my gut on fire. In 18 of the 32 cases, witnesses claimed to see the missing person talking to a ranger right before vanishing. Descriptions varied, but every single one mentioned a uniformed ranger, guiding hikers toward a restricted or closed trail. Daniel's face darkened. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. Officially, no ranger should have been there. Duty logs, GPS tracking, radio comms, every one of those incidents, there's no record of a ranger in the area. Someone's been using our authority to isolate people, and we've never caught them. He pointed to a section on the topographic map, Oak Mulgee Unit, a stretch closed off since 1994 after trail washouts. Signs everywhere warning hikers to stay out. Patrolled regularly,
yet remote enough for someone to slip in unseen. Rugged terrain, perfect for hiding evidence. The first 3 weeks were normal training, shadowing Daniel, learning trails, practicing rescue drills. But I couldn't shake those missing persons reports. 40 years. Someone hunting in this forest like it was their backyard. During downtime, I pored over every file, searching for patterns the official investigations might have missed.
That's when I noticed it. 7 of the missing had listed Pinhoti Trail as their destination. But their entry and exit points didn't match any official trailheads. Cross-check with current maps, and the locations lined up with old trails closed in the 80s. Someone was giving hikers outdated info, directing them into isolation, into danger. I brought it to Daniel. He didn't flinch, just nodded. We've known someone's feeding false trail info, fake websites, in person at trailheads. Never caught them. Increased patrols, hidden cameras, warnings. Nothing. Whoever's doing this knows the Forest Service inside out. Smart, patient, and cold as ice. 6 weeks in, my first solo patrol came up. Routine check. Trail conditions, campsite compliance, Oak Mulgee Unit, 3 miles from the restricted area. Mild October weather, light traffic expected. I drove my white Chevy Silverado, Forest Service markings, to the trailhead. First 2 hours. Boring. Checked signs, documented erosion, chatted with a day hike couple. Friendly, prepared, following marked trails. Then around 11:30 a.m., I hit a junction. Main trail intersected an old service road, gated and closed. But the gate was open. Chain on the ground, cut cleanly with bolt cutters. I radioed in. Station told me to investigate, but not alone. Backup 45 minutes out. So I waited, eyes on the junction, scanning for anyone leaving. Then I saw it. Another truck, same model, same white Chevy Silverado, Forest Service markings, parked 100 yards down the road, hidden behind pines. My first thought, another ranger. Checked the radio. No units logged here. Cautious, I approached, calling out. No answer. Truck empty. Keys in ignition, radio on but muted. VIN didn't match any in the fleet. Then I heard voices. Male, female, casual conversation. 50 yards deeper in the woods. I crept closer. A woman, mid-30s, backpack, hiking gear. And a man, uniform identical to mine, walking beside her like old friends. Something in his left hand, small, unidentifiable from my spot. I called out, identified myself as a ranger, told them to stop. The woman looked confused. The man? Didn't even flinch. He grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the restricted area. I bolted after them, shouting. They moved too fast, fluid through rough terrain, disappearing over a ridge shrouded in mountain laurel. I reached the ridge. Nothing. Just silence, heavy and unnatural. Skin crawling. I radioed for immediate backup, started a systematic search. That's when I almost walked past a cabin, hidden so well I'd missed it at first glance. Old, but maintained. Generator in a shed. Path leading to a root cellar dug into the hill. Inside, a nightmare. Uniforms hanging, radios, badges, vehicle keys, enough to impersonate a ranger perfectly. Filing system with photos, IDs, personal items, notes on 18 victims. Root cellar? Horror I can't fully describe. Proof that at least 18 people had been killed and hidden there. I called every unit available, secured the area, waited 40 minutes for backup. Tactical team, FBI. The man wasn't there. Truck still in place. The woman? Found 2 miles away, disoriented, head injury, alive. She said he posed as a ranger, claimed the main trail closed due to a bear, offered to guide her on an alternate route. She followed, trusting the uniform. The investigation ripped the forest wide open. Evidence tied the cabin and its owner, Marcus Whitley, 68, former Forest Service employee fired in 1979 for misconduct, to 18 of the 32 disappearances. He'd kept uniforms, radios, badges, vehicles, all to lure victims into that restricted patch for decades. He knew the schedules, patrol blind spots, communication protocols. Marcus had been hunting in this forest longer than most of the rangers on staff had been alive. They caught him 3 days later at a gas station 90 miles away. He was already scouting a move, Tennessee next. Interrogation revealed 18 murders, but Marcus claimed there were more. Victims he'd buried so meticulously that their remains would never be found. Investigators recovered 11 sets of bones on the property. 7 of the 32 missing remain unsolved, and authorities suspect Marcus, though he refused to reveal locations. The Oak-Mulgee section of Talladega is permanently closed now. Surveillance cameras, motion sensors, patrols, nothing left to chance. The Forest Service even instituted a new badge verification protocol. Hikers must confirm ranger identities officially before venturing into any isolated areas. I finished my training, stuck around Talladega 2 more years, but eventually transferred. Couldn't keep patrolling those trails, knowing someone had worn my uniform to kill, exploiting the trust visitors placed in us. That thought, the shadows he left behind, lingered on every path. Sometimes I think about the woman I saved, how close she came to being victim number 19, how easily she could have disappeared like the rest, and the 7 whose remains were never recovered, families still waiting for answers that may never come. Talladega is stunning. Ancient trees, winding creeks, wildflowers bursting through mossy banks, deer and foxes, owls calling through the night. But the forest has its skeletons, secrets hidden under roots, behind rocks, inside hollows that have seen things humans weren't meant to witness. Generations of horror layered under the beauty. Some of it we'll never uncover. Some of it will always stay in the dark, waiting for the next person to wander too far, trust the wrong uniform, take a wrong turn. I remember that October morning as if the forest carved it into my memory. Mild air, sunlight spilling through tall pines, birds calling. I was just a ranger, starting a routine patrol. Then the gate, cut clean. The duplicate truck, the voices, and that man in my uniform leading a woman into the closed section like it was a casual stroll. The forest was quiet afterward, almost sentient in its silence. The ridge where I lost them seemed to breathe against me. Rocks and roots betrayed no trace of footsteps, no clue where they'd gone. Just the cabin, hidden like a secret the forest had been keeping for decades. Walking in there, seeing the uniforms, the files, the root cellar, my stomach turned. Each item a testament to the lives Marcus had stolen. Each page a countdown of horror. When backup arrived, the tension didn't ease. Tactical units, FBI, investigators moving through the property with meticulous care. The man had vanished, leaving only evidence. The woman, alive but broken, clung to life and her story. It was a miracle she made it out. A single day's trust in a uniform could have ended her existence, and there were 18 who weren't so lucky. Marcus's capture sent ripples through the Forest Service. Policies changed, protocols tightened, training overhauled. But some truths aren't fixed by rules. Some truths linger in the soil, in the echo of footsteps through a forest that knows your name before you ever speak it. Every time I drove past Oak-Mulgee after that, I felt the weight of what happened there. The forest didn't forgive. It didn't forget. Even now, years later, I can't shake the sense that those trees are watching, holding the memory of every scream, every vanished hiker, every secret buried in the soil. I think about the families, the ones still waiting for closure. 7 souls never found. Marcus would never lead anyone to their graves. Talladega keeps them like it keeps the wind, hidden, restless, unrelenting. The forest's beauty is a trap, a lure, the calm before the storm of fear it's nurtured over decades. I moved on, transferred districts, tried to keep my mind on the trails I patrolled next, the mundane day-to-day of forest maintenance, fire checks, and visitor guidance. But some memories don't fade. Some forests have teeth. Some predators wear uniforms and know the rhythm of your heartbeat before you even see them. And sometimes, late at night, I hear a whisper in my mind, like the forest itself is talking. Reminders of what I saw, what could have happened, and what still lingers. Talladega is alive in a way most people don't see. It remembers, and it punishes. Not every shadow moves with malice, but every quiet corner hides a warning. The woman I saved? She got her life back, scarred but breathing. The others weren't so lucky. I carry them with me like weights on my chest, like ghosts tethered to the sound of snapping twigs and rustling leaves. I'll never forget the first time I saw that duplicate truck. The gate cut with precision, or the man leading her into the restricted zone. Every detail burned into my memory. The root cellar, the files, the uniforms. I replay it all in my head. Every detail a reminder of how close terror can get when it wears a familiar face. Talladega is breathtaking, deadly, ancient. It's a forest full of life and full of shadows that will never see daylight. Some stories there will never end. Some voices will never be found. And some people, no matter how vigilant or trained, will only ever know the edges of its secrets. But I survived. I carried her out. I brought evidence to light. And the forest, as beautiful as it is, will continue to whisper its truths to anyone willing, or foolish enough, to listen. Some of those trails I will never walk again. Some of those woods I will never enter. Because the forest has its history, and some parts of it are best left in darkness. The echoes of Marcus Whitley's reign remain, stitched into the roots, the rocks, the soil, the air. And even now, decades later, I feel them. Reminders that Talladega's secrets never truly die. They wait, patient, watching, hungry. I was 35 when the story hit my desk that would shatter my career in journalism and almost take my life. I'd been slogging away as an investigative reporter for a regional paper for 8 years, digging up the rot in local government and chasing environmental nightmares across northern Alabama. Then the tip came. A thick, unmarked envelope slid into my office. No return address. Just a jumble of financial ledgers, property deeds, and a scrawled note. Look at Millbrook after the mine closed. The note whispered of a town that shouldn't exist. Millbrook, a speck of life in Limestone County, about 1,200 souls, had been built on the back of one employer, the Hartwell Mining Company. That quarry had pumped wealth into the town since the 1940s. Jobs, taxes, life. Then, in 1990, it shut down. Resources gone, regulators cracking down, predictions of collapse everywhere. Experts said Millbrook would fade fast. Shuttered stores, empty streets, ghosts of a town swallowed by time. But it didn't. The town held steady almost overnight. Shops stayed open. Taxes still trickled in. Streets stayed clean. The population didn't dip. Something was propping it up, and it wasn't luck. When I dug into the numbers, the first thing that hit me was the municipal budget for 1991. Just a year after the mines shuttered, the town's coffers grew. Revenues listed as contract fees and licensing agreements. Vague, empty-sounding, but enough to make a reporter's pulse spike. I rolled into Millbrook one Monday morning in late April, the sun already climbing over a town that seemed ordinary at first glance. Small businesses, neat streets, a modern elementary school suggesting someone had spent money recently. I started at Town Hall, asking for records on the revenue bump post-mine closure. Natalie, the clerk in her mid-40s, handled my request efficiently, but warned it'd take a few days to pull everything. While waiting, I prowled the town, talking to locals about how Millbrook survived the mine collapse. Answers were eerily uniform, like they'd been coached. We diversified the economy. The council made smart choices. We pulled together as a community. Push for specifics, and the cheeriness slipped. Vague glances, changed subjects, nervous laughter. Something under the surface didn't want me digging. I booked a room at a small motel on the edge of town. Spent nights circling Millbrook in my rental, camera in hand, logging anything suspicious. That's when I noticed the trucks. Big commercial rigs, plates from Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, creeping into the old quarry after dark. The gates were supposed to be locked. Environmental inspectors had sealed the place years ago. But here were these trucks, rumbling up the gravel, ghostly in the moonlight, disappearing behind trees that should have hidden nothing. Night 3, I tail one of them, headlights off, sticking to shadows. The quarry road twisted through broken limestone hills. Up ahead, lights glinted against metal drums and crates. Men in work clothes moved with precision, unloading the cargo, forklifts groaning under the weight. I crouched in the brush, telephoto lens capturing everything. Trucks, drums, faces, movements. Morning came like a punch. Town Hall, Natalie had the folder. The records laid it bare. Millbrook's council had made a deal with a company called Tri-State Environmental Solutions. $400,000 a year for access to the sealed quarry. They claimed long-term storage of inert industrial materials. But the company wasn't local. It was a shell set up in Delaware, tracing back to a New Jersey waste outfit notorious for violations. The truth: the quarry wasn't inert. It was a dumping ground for hazardous industrial and medical waste, illegally stashed in limestone, leaking slowly into the town's veins. I spent the next week documenting it all. Water samples, soil, interviews with locals. Cancer rates nearly 3 times the state average. Birth defects, autoimmune disorders, neurological damage. Millbrook was a slow-motion nightmare, the town poisoning itself in the name of survival. I handed the samples to Dr. Andrew Chen at the University of Alabama. He confirmed what I feared. Solvents, heavy metals, medical byproducts, all at levels that should have killed anyone exposed for long enough. Groundwater, soil, crops, all tainted. 20 years of slow, invisible death. People drank it, ate it, lived it, unaware. Then the visit came. 3 suited men at the motel, talking straight out of a corporate horror film. The leader, Marcus, a sharp-eyed man who could pass for a lawyer, laid it out flat. "We know what you're doing. We can make this go away." He offered $250,000 under the table, a consulting contract to keep me quiet, let me keep my career. I said no. I would publish, turn everything over to the feds, expose the rot. Marcus smiled like I'd played right into his trap. He leaned closer, voice low, dangerous. "Millbrook survives because of us. Destroy that, and the town dies. 1,200 people lose their homes, their lives. Is that what you want?" I looked at him straight in the eye. The people deserve to know they're being poisoned, that their kids are getting cancer because leaders sold them out. He gave a final warning. He knew where I lived, what I drove, where I worked. Publish and legal action wouldn't be the only option. Mining towns are dangerous places. Accidents happen. That night, my motel room got hit. Laptop gone. Backup hard drive gone. Camera with the quarry shots gone. But I'd been careful. Everything was already in secure cloud storage. Copies sent to my editor. Next morning, I drove straight to the FBI in Birmingham. Evidence, photographs, witness statements, threats. I unloaded it all. 3 months later, federal, EPA, and Alabama Department of Environmental Management agents descended on Millbrook with warrants. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. The quarry, 40,000 tons of hazardous waste, stacked, leaking, poisoning everything around it. Groundwater feeding 3 separate municipal water systems. Streams running downstream carrying solvents, metals, medical waste. The contamination didn't just touch Millbrook. It stretched beyond, strangling other towns in its path. The public health nightmare was massive, invisible, ticking. By the time the raids wrapped, 47 people were arrested. Mayor, 5 town council members, the town doctor who'd buried illness patterns in charts and lies, and 18 employees of Tri-State Environmental Solutions. The company executives got hit with racketeering, conspiracy, and environmental crime charges. Town officials were charged as co-conspirators, each one a willing player in a deal that had kept Millbrook financially alive while slowly poisoning its people for more than 20 years. The impact on the residents was horrifying. Over 300 current and former Millbrook citizens were documented with illnesses linked directly to the toxic exposure. Cancers of every kind, neurological disorders, autoimmune conditions, developmental disorders in children. Houses nearest the quarry were condemned, streets emptied, families split apart. The town that had somehow defied economic death finally started dying. Not from industry leaving, but from human greed hiding behind bureaucracy. I watched as the population fell by nearly 60% in 2 years. Schools that had been full of children became silent. Shops closed. Streets I'd once photographed under moonlight for hidden activity were empty, swallowed by weeds and neglect. Millbrook was unraveling, the invisible poison now visible in every shuttered window and boarded-up storefront. The town that survived should have survived the mine collapse, but it didn't survive its leaders. The woman I'd photographed unloading barrels into the quarry was lucky. Disoriented, injured, scared beyond words, she survived to tell her story. But I couldn't shake the thought of the people who weren't so lucky. Their names, their faces, buried in the soil and in secret ledgers. The betrayal cut deeper than any environmental disaster. This was a moral horror, a community sold out from the inside. Even after the arrests, the threats didn't stop. I kept receiving anonymous messages. Watch your back. Not everyone is caught. I moved to another state, changed careers, tried to bury the part of myself that sought the darkness in people, that pried open secrets and found rotting hearts beneath. But Millbrook never left me. I still think about it when a news alert mentions a small town surviving against odds, when I pass a closed quarry, when I see the empty lot where a school once buzzed with life. The class action lawsuit eventually settled for $180 million, a staggering sum meant to patch the wounds. But money can't heal what decades of exposure took. Bodies already sick, children already harmed, families already fractured. And the town? Partially evacuated. Condemned property. Streets with shadows of lives that used to exist. Those who survived carry the burden of knowing their leaders chose profit over life. A slow, insidious death that went on for generations. I left journalism 6 months after my story hit. The nightmares lingered. Not just the visions of barrels and trucks, of barrels spilling toxic liquid into the dark, of faces frozen mid-panic, but the realization that humans could weaponize the very towns meant to sustain them. Even with Marcus and the others behind bars, I knew the network ran deeper. Some pieces of the puzzle were missing. Some people I had yet to meet, or already knew, still walked free. I changed my life. I moved. I quit chasing stories. I tried to exist somewhere away from the pulse of corruption. But Millbrook follows you once you've seen it up close. The town that cheated death only to trade it for poison, left scars in the land, in the water, in the people, and in me. I think about those who trusted, who believed, who lived ordinary lives while the machinery of greed ran quietly behind closed doors. And I think about how many other towns might be hiding the same horror. Deals made in shadows, futures stolen for temporary survival. Sometimes I drive past small towns in the South and wonder, which ones are ticking time bombs? Which communities are smiling on the surface while the roots are rotting? Millbrook taught me to look closer, to read between the lines, but also what it means to survive after seeing too much. Some towns die slowly. Some vanish overnight. Millbrook? It died a little each day, quietly, while everyone looked the other way. The story still burns in my memory. The envelope, the trucks, the barrels, Marcus smiling like the devil himself had sent him, the quarry leaking silently into lives, the town council's secret deals. Millbrook is a lesson etched in my bones. Trust is fragile. Greed is monstrous. And sometimes the real horror is watching people you thought were protectors weaponize their own community. I carry that with me now, a shadow over everything I do. I've built a life away from investigation, but I cannot forget Millbrook. The names of those poisoned, the streets emptied, the children who will never know a town that thrived, the adults who survived but will always bear the cost. I think about how easy it is to hide disaster behind normalcy, how a town can survive economically while dying physically, how a community's heart can be sold in the name of survival. The horror isn't just what people do to each other. It's how easily it can go unnoticed, how ordinary it can look, how quiet it can be until the damage is irreversible. Millbrook was one town, but it could be countless others. And that is the part that stays with you long after you leave.